The scratch in my daughter-in-law's voice still echoed. "You're just extra weight." Still, I kept wiping the table between us, one slow circle, one breath at a time. As her citrus perfume clung to the cushion she always chose, I stared through it. While my estate documents loaded on screen, I highlighted her name in quiet rhythm. The same woman who married my son thought I had nowhere left to stand. That's when I erased her from every line tied to mine and left the pen uncapped. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The Sunday light over Scottsdale had that faint, honey gold shimmer that made the desert look merciful. The Cross family's private club sat at the edge of a golf course, where palm fronds rattled in the breeze and the air smelled faintly of citrus and sunscreen. Inside, the brunch crowd murmured over Bloody Marys and Eggs Benedict. Lena Cross stepped through the arched doorway, her linen blazer pressed, her silver hair gathered low at her neck, pearls catching the light like tiny moons. She paused a moment at the host stand. She could already see them, Daniel and Haley, at a corner table by the window, sunlight spilling across the white tablecloth. Haley's laugh carried first. Sharp, bright, like something that had been sharpened for use. When Lena reached the table, Haley didn't look up. Not even a nod. She lifted her phone, snapped a photo of her mimosa, and tapped something on the screen. Daniel rose halfway, awkwardly, as if unsure whether to hug or wave. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice tight. Eyes flicking toward his wife for permission he didn't realize he was seeking. "Morning," Lena said, sliding gracefully into her seat. She placed her napkin on her lap, the motion precise, practiced. For several long seconds, only the clinking of cutlery filled the silence. Haley scrolled through her phone, then finally set it down with a sigh. "Sorry, just finalizing next weekend's plans," she said, turning to Daniel. "We're still on for Cabo, right?" Daniel's fork paused midair. "We'll see how work looks this week." Haley's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You always say that." Lena reached for her coffee, taking a measured sip. "Cabo sounds lovely," she said lightly. "I've always loved the way the ocean smells there." Haley blinked, then turned her attention to the waiter approaching. "We'll have another round of mimosas," she said quickly, without looking at Lena. Then, to Daniel, "You know, maybe we should start doing these brunches just us. It's been feeling crowded lately." Daniel frowned, unsure if he'd heard her right. "It's just Mom," he said. Haley didn't lower her voice. "Exactly." The table went still. Even the waiter hesitated, pretending to adjust silverware before walking away. Lena's spine straightened, but her face didn't move. The stillness in her was its own weapon, one she'd honed over years of widowhood and board meetings and polite betrayals dressed as compliments. Haley leaned back, twirling her straw. "No offense, Lena, but you're always tagging along on our stuff. The golf outing, the resort weekend. It's just..." She let out a small laugh, the kind that could slice glass. "You're kind of extra weight at this point." Daniel froze. His hand went to his glass, then stopped halfway. "Haley..." But Lena spoke first, quietly. "Extra weight," she repeated, almost like she was testing the words for flavor. Then she smiled. Small, perfectly shaped, the kind that never reached her eyes either. "I see." Haley gave a dismissive shrug, as if the moment didn't matter. "I mean, I'm just being honest. Family dynamics change, right?" Lena nodded once. "They do." Daniel tried to laugh, a weak, nervous sound that fell flat against the white linen and crystal. "Come on, let's just eat. Mom, did you try the salmon Benedict last time? It's really..." But Lena had already gone quiet again. She lifted her coffee, steady hands betraying nothing, and took one slow sip. Her reflection rippled faintly in the dark surface of the cup. Then she set it down, placed her napkin neatly beside her plate, and glanced toward the windows where the desert heat shimmered beyond the glass. "Excuse me for a moment," she said softly. Neither Daniel nor Haley moved to stop her. She walked across the dining room, each step deliberate, heels striking marble in calm rhythm. Behind her, laughter rose from another table, light and careless. The world continued turning as if nothing had happened. But Lena's face, reflected briefly in the mirrored column by the exit, had changed. Her expression wasn't angry, it wasn't wounded, it was resolved. Outside, the sunlight burned brighter. The valet moved to retrieve her car, but Lena lifted a hand. "No need," she said. "I'll walk." As she stepped onto the sunlit path that curved along the golf course, her phone buzzed with a notification, an automated reminder about her next estate review. She looked at it for a long moment, then slid it back into her purse. The wind lifted, tugging at the edge of her blazer. She didn't look back toward the club, or toward the laughter echoing faintly behind her. By the time she reached the parking lot, a quiet thought had already taken root. It wasn't anger. It was colder, clearer, more exact. Section 2. The paperwork. She didn't read. 700 words. The next morning, Scottsdale woke beneath a glassy blue sky, the kind that pretended yesterday's heat hadn't burned anyone. Lena Cross arrived at Sloan & Associates just after 9, her heels clicking across the marble lobby, her composure as crisp as the cool air conditioning whispering from the vents. The receptionist looked up with a start. Lena rarely scheduled anything this early. "Good morning, Mrs. Cross," the young woman said. "It will be," Lena replied. Wendy Sloane's office faced the McDowell Mountains, their pale ridges framed in the floor-to-ceiling window like a painting. She was already standing when Lena entered. Immaculate as always, her gray suit pressed sharp enough to cut paper. Wendy had represented Lena for nearly 2 decades. She knew the look in her client's eyes well enough to set aside the small talk. "What happened?" she asked simply. Lena set her bag down on the edge of the desk. "Someone reminded me yesterday that I've been far too generous." Wendy waited. She'd learned that silence was Lena's preferred invitation to speak freely. Lena took a breath, calm and deliberate. "I want Haley Cross removed from every document that carries my name. All of them. Trusts, proxies, deeds. Anything she could someday claim was part of her family legacy." Wendy blinked once. "That's comprehensive." "I don't do things halfway," Lena said, settling into the leather chair opposite her. "I want her erased. Quietly. Efficiently." Wendy nodded, opening a drawer and pulling out a thick folder. "You realize, this will cause a firestorm. Daniel will call. She'll call." Lena cut her off with a soft smile. "Then I hope they brought water." The lawyer's lips twitched. Almost a smile, but not quite. She flipped through pages, jotting quick notes in the margins with a fountain pen. "We'll need signatures on the property removals and the trust amendment. I'll have Jasmine start compiling the list of accounts Haley's name touches." "Good," Lena said. "And Wendy. She's not to be notified in advance. Not a whisper." "Understood." Through the window, a golf cart buzzed lazily across the manicured course below. The silence between them thickened, not hostile, but heavy with something unspoken. Wendy finally looked up. "You're sure about this?" Lena's expression didn't waver. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Down the hall, Jasmine Holt was already at her desk when Lena entered. Her workspace was a small fortress of color-coded binders and neatly labeled files. A mug of coffee steamed beside her keyboard, untouched. "Morning, Mrs. Cross," she said. "Wendy said you're making some changes." "Yes," Lena said, leaning over the desk to scan a spreadsheet. "We're starting a new column. Anything Haley's name appears on. I want it removed or reissued under mine alone. Jasmine hesitated only a second. That's quite a list. She's on the Desert Ridge property deed, the Sedona timeshare, and all of it, Lena said. No exceptions. Jasmine nodded, already typing. She'd worked for Lena long enough to recognize the tone, steady, cool, irrevocable. As she moved from one document to the next, Lena paced slowly behind her, studying the neat rows of names and numbers glowing on the monitor. Every keystroke sounded like the clipping of a thread. Jasmine broke the silence. Do you want me to set up new signature verifications for Daniel's side too? No. Leave him where he is, Lena said quietly. He's still my son. For now. Jasmine didn't ask what "for now" meant. She just kept typing. The rhythmic tap of keys filling the office. By noon, Wendy returned with the first stack of documents. She placed them on the table: legal parchment, trust amendments, title transfers, medical directive forms. The pile was tall enough to cast a shadow across Lena's lap. Everything you asked for, Wendy said. Once you sign these, Haley Cross disappears from your estate. Lena removed her glasses, folded them neatly, and began to sign, page after page, her signature looping with calm precision. There was no tremor in her hand, no hesitation, just the faint scratch of ink across paper and the quiet hum of the building's central air. When she finished, she capped the pen, leaned back, and looked out the window. The sun had climbed high now, bleaching the desert to a near-white glare. Do you ever regret doing what's right? She asked. Wendy considered her. Right is relative. But you? No. You've always done what's necessary. Lena smiled faintly. That's what I thought. She stood, gathering her purse. Send the updated deeds to the registry today. I want every trace filed before the weekend. Understood. At the door, Lena paused, her hand on the polished brass handle. Her reflection in the glass looked steady, almost serene. Wendy, she said, without turning, when this storm hits, let them think it came out of nowhere. Then she opened the door, sunlight cutting across her face like a verdict. Morning light streamed through the wide windows of Lena's study, painting the mahogany desk in honey tones. The air smelled faintly of lemon oil and paper, clean, decisive. Stacks of folders waited in perfect order, each marked with thin gold tabs. Jasmine sat opposite her, typing briskly, the quiet tap of keys a metronome to Lena's thoughts. On the monitor, the Cross Family Trust filled the screen, dense paragraphs of legal language, percentages, and contingencies. Lena's eyes traced one line and stopped. Contingent beneficiary, Haley Cross. The name looked wrong there, an ink stain across decades of careful legacy. She leaned back slightly, lips pressing together. How long has that clause been in place? 6 years, Jasmine replied. Daniel added her after they got married. Standard spousal inclusion. Standard, Lena repeated, her tone as dry as parchment. We're done with standard. A knock came at the door. Mr. Alvarez entered, his leather briefcase in hand, glasses glinting beneath the light. He was precise, always had been, his posture and tone suggesting a man who never once misplaced a decimal. Morning, Lena, he said. I reviewed the adjusted portfolio. Everything checks out, though we'll need to refile ownership for the Desert Ridge and Sedona properties. Your changes are significant. They're overdue, Lena said. Alvarez nodded approvingly. I've also updated the capital gains forms and your charitable deductions. If Haley tries to access the financial dashboards, she'll find her permissions revoked. Good, Lena said. She reached for her glasses, scanning the first page of the tax schedule. Her initials, her signatures, every curve of her name was a quiet reclamation of power. Jasmine swiveled her laptop toward them. I've added new language to the deed for the Sedona property. No external beneficiary access, no spousal proxy rights. She can't claim it under Daniel's marital assets anymore. Lena studied the document, her finger gliding down the text. Add one more clause, she said. Any future transfer requires written consent from me or my successor trustee. That should keep opportunists busy. Jasmine typed without comment, her eyes flickering with the satisfaction of precision. Mr. Alvarez cleared his throat gently. You're moving fast, Lena. I admire it. But are you prepared for how this might ripple through the family? Lena smiled faintly. Ripples are harmless, Richard. It's the undertow that matters. Later that afternoon, Lena sat at the marble island in her kitchen, reviewing donation paperwork spread like a fan before her. The name of the nonprofit at the top of the page, the Maricopa Women's Recovery Fund, brought a rare warmth to her expression. It was quiet, meaningful, useful. The kind of generosity that didn't require a thank you dinner. The title transfer listed donor, Lena Whitmore, her maiden name. She hadn't used it in decades. Seeing it in print again stirred something deep, something sharp and free. Wendy's voice echoed from the speakerphone on the counter. This will reduce your taxable estate, Lena. A clean move. Elegant, even. Good, Lena said softly. I'm tired of people thinking what's mine is negotiable. She signed the page, the pen gliding smoothly across her old name. When she looked up, sunlight fractured through the kitchen window, scattering light across the marble like shards of gold. For a moment, the air felt lighter. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Mom. Saw this and thought of you. It was a meme. Something about when moms micromanage even heaven. He had no idea what machinery was turning quietly beneath his life. Lena smiled faintly, typed back only a heart emoji, and set the phone face down. Almost immediately, another notification flashed. A social media alert. She didn't follow Haley, but mutual friends had shared the post. Haley Cross. Can't wait to inherit good taste. The caption shimmered beneath a photo of her holding a champagne flute in a marble foyer. Lena's marble foyer. Lena stared at the image for several long seconds. Then she turned her phone off entirely. No sigh, no shake of the head. Just that quiet, decisive click. By evening, the last document had been notarized and filed. The office lights glowed low and amber, casting long shadows across the floor. Mr. P. Alvarez gathered his things, and Jasmine stacked the completed folders neatly in a fireproof case. Everything's in motion, Jasmine said softly. Lena rose from her chair. Then let it move. Through the window, the desert horizon blushed orange and violet. She stood there, watching the color fade, her reflection merging with the glass. The woman looking back at her didn't seem older, just sharper, like time had distilled her instead of worn her down. The following afternoon, the desert sun burned low and sharp against the blinds of Wendy Sloane's office. The air hummed faintly with the sound of the copier and the whisper of turning paper. Lena sat opposite Wendy, both women angled toward a spread of documents that looked harmless enough until one understood what they meant. Every signature, every notarized stamp, every clause told a quiet story of extraction. Haley Cross was being erased, line by legal line. Last signature here, Wendy said, sliding the final page forward. This covers the Sedona property and the joint account transfers. Once these are filed, her legal footprint in your estate is gone. Lena picked up the pen. Her hands were steady. There was no hesitation, no quiver, not even a breath caught between strokes. The pen moved with the calm precision of someone who had already grieved, already decided. When she was done, Wendy gathered the stack carefully, tapping it into a clean edge before slipping it into an embossed folder. It's done, she said. Lena stood, smoothing her jacket. Then so am I. Back at home, The afternoon light stretched across the living room, spilling over glass and stone like honey. Jasmine sat at the dining table with her laptop open, legal templates arranged beside her in disciplined order. She looked up as Lena approached. "The revisions to your will are ready," Jasmine said, tone professional but soft. "Daniel remains primary heir. Haley's name is gone completely." Lena walked to the window, gazing out at the cactus-lined yard. "And the clause?" "Added," Jasmine confirmed. "If anyone attempts to reinstate Haley's name, it triggers an automatic freeze on distribution until the court resolves it." Lena's reflection in the glass was pale and precise. "Good. Let's make sure she learns the value of silence the hard way." Jasmine closed the laptop with a click. "You want me to drop these off at Wendy's office tonight?" "Yes. No digital copies. Paper only." "Understood." By dusk, the house had fallen into its familiar stillness, air conditioner humming softly, the faint scent of jasmine tea lingering from dinner. Lena was reviewing a magazine at the kitchen island when the doorbell rang. She rarely received unannounced visitors. Jasmine was gone for the evening. Wendy would never appear without notice. When she opened the door, Haley Cross stood there, framed in the desert twilight, all polished veneer and perfume. "Hi, Lena," she said brightly, though her eyes flickered with a hint of unease. "I was in the area. Thought I'd stop by." Lena's hand stayed lightly on the doorknob. "How thoughtful." Haley smiled a little too wide. "Do you have a minute? I wanted to talk to you about something. Business-related." Lena gestured for her to come in, stepping aside with the faintest smile. "Of course. I always have time for business." In the living room, Haley perched on the edge of the couch, crossing her legs neatly. She carried a glossy binder that looked like it had been rehearsed for presentation. "I've been thinking," Haley began, tone smooth, rehearsed. "You have all these investments, real estate, charitable funds, the family holdings, and I thought maybe we could collaborate. I've been developing a new venture, lifestyle branding, high-end interiors, legacy aesthetics. The cross name would add instant value." Lena moved to the sideboard, pouring herself a cup of tea. Steam curled softly upward, fragrant and calm. "Legacy aesthetics," she repeated, her voice gentle, almost amused. Haley nodded eagerly. "Exactly. It's more than design, it's identity. We could turn it into something global. This could all be ours one day." Lena turned then, her face composed, her tone light. "Not anymore." Haley blinked, uncertain whether she'd heard correctly. "I'm sorry. What?" Lena took a slow sip of her tea, eyes steady. "You spoke truth at that brunch, Haley. I was extra weight, wasn't I? Consider this. Your freedom." Color drained from Haley's face, though she tried to laugh it off. I don't follow." Lena set her teacup down gently. "You will." The silence between them stretched taut, humming like a drawn string. Haley shifted, gathering her binder, her voice small. "Well, I guess I misread the room." "People do," Lena said softly. Haley rose, clutching the binder like armor. "Daniel will—" Lena's gaze lifted, cutting her short. "Daniel will adjust." The younger woman hesitated, her practiced charm cracking at the edges. "You're really doing this, aren't you?" Lena smiled, a small, perfect crescent of composure. "It's already done." When the door finally shut behind her, Lena stood for a long moment in the silence. The air smelled faintly of Haley's perfume. Expensive, synthetic, gone already. She walked back to her desk, the one facing the garden. On it sat the signed folder Wendy had delivered earlier that afternoon. Lena opened it briefly, tracing one page with her fingertip, the neat line where Haley's name had once been. Outside, the sky had gone completely dark, the kind of darkness that only came after heat had burned itself out. Haley Cross liked to start her mornings with a sense of control. Her espresso machine hissed, her playlist of power mood songs filled the marble kitchen, and her reflection, flawless and filtered, glowed back from the dark window. Everything about her life, from the diamond bracelets to the scent of imported lilies on the counter, was curated to project stability. But that illusion cracked at 9:12 a.m. "Mrs. Cross?" The voice on the phone was hesitant. "This is Glenn from Valley Trust Bank. I'm calling to confirm a recent change in the Cross Family Trust authorization." Haley paused mid-sip, her tone instantly sweet. "Change? I'm not aware of any change. I'm a contingent trustee on that account." There was a pause, papers rustling. "Actually, ma'am, as of yesterday, your name no longer appears on the authorization list. All access has been restricted." The mug slipped in her hand, coffee splashing across the marble. "That's impossible," she snapped. "My husband and I have joint access." "I understand, but Mrs. Cross, the documents were amended and filed by Mrs. Lena Cross herself. Everything's finalized and notarized." Haley felt something slide cold through her. Panic. Pure and electric. "There must be a mistake," she said, voice breaking. "My name has been on that trust for years." "I'm sorry, ma'am. You'll need to speak directly with the estate administrator if you have questions." The call ended before she could respond. For the first time in months, the silence in her perfect kitchen felt hostile. By 9:30, she was driving far too fast down Camelback Road, tires squealing as she turned into Daniel's office parking lot. She stormed past the receptionist, high heels hammering the tile. Daniel looked up from his desk, startled. "Haley, what are you—" She slammed her bag down. "Did you know?" He blinked. "Know what?" "My name. It's gone. Off the trust. Off everything." Her voice cracked through the air like a whip. "Your mother removed me." Daniel stood slowly, confusion furrowing his brow. "That doesn't make sense. She wouldn't just—" "She did," Haley snapped. "The bank confirmed it. She erased me." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Let me call her." He reached for his phone, thumb hovering over the contact list. For a brief moment, Haley saw the hesitation in him, the boy who'd always needed someone else to make the hard calls. When Lena answered, her voice was steady as glass. "Daniel." "Mom," he began, his voice uncertain. "Haley just got a call from the bank. They said—" "That her name is no longer on the trust?" Lena finished for him. "Yes, that's correct." Haley leaned close enough for her voice to carry through the speaker. "Lena, what the hell is this? You can't just—" "I can," Lena said, her tone calm, unyielding. "And I did." Haley's breath hitched. "Why?" There was a pause, quiet enough to hear the faint hum of wind through Lena's end of the line. "Because you made your opinion of me clear," she said evenly. "You called me extra weight. I'm simply returning the favor." Daniel closed his eyes, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Mom, this isn't—" "Daniel?" Lena interrupted, her voice soft but edged. "You may not like my decision, but it's mine. And it's final." The call disconnected. Haley stood frozen, the room spinning. She turned on Daniel, fury trembling beneath her skin. "You're not going to do anything?" He sighed. "Haley, it's her money, her trust. What do you expect me to— "To fix it!" she shouted. "You're her son." He didn't answer. His silence was worse than any insult could have been. Haley grabbed her purse and stormed out, leaving the smell of her perfume trailing in the air like smoke after a match. 2 hours later, she was in her car again, parked outside the family's financial office, fingers drumming against the steering wheel. Her mind was a carousel of panic. What else had Lena taken? What was left under her name? Inside, Mr. Alvarez greeted her with the tight politeness of someone who had already been warned. "Mrs. Cross," he said, adjusting his glasses. "How can I help you today?" I need access to the Cross financial dashboard, she said quickly. Lena must have made a mistake with the authorizations. I'm afraid I can't do that, Alvarez replied gently. Access has been restricted. Permanently. Restricted? Haley's laugh came out brittle. I'm family. Even family needs authorization, he said, his tone quiet but immovable. And you no longer have it. Haley's hands clenched on the edge of the desk. You've known me for years, Richard. You've handled our accounts. I follow the documents, Mrs. Cross, he said simply. And the documents speak very clearly. For the first time, Haley saw it. The faint glimmer of loyalty that didn't belong to her. Alvarez's allegiance wasn't with her, or even Daniel. It was with Lena. Always had been. She swallowed, her throat dry as desert sand. You'll regret this, she whispered. I doubt it, Alvarez said softly, already turning to his computer. But I imagine you might. By the time she reached her car again, Haley's hands were trembling. Her reflection in the rearview mirror didn't look composed anymore. It looked terrified. The queen of appearances, stripped of her crown. Her phone buzzed. A notification from social media. The photo from the other day still sat at the top of her feed. Can't wait to inherit good taste. The irony sliced deeper than any insult Lena could have spoken aloud. The call came just after 9, when the Arizona morning light was spilling soft and gold across Lena's back patio. She was trimming the small citrus trees along the wall, her quiet ritual of control, when the phone buzzed in her apron pocket. The name flashing on the screen stopped her mid-motion. Marjorie Dorsey, Haley's mother. Lena brushed the soil from her gloves and answered. Good morning. Marjorie's voice came through honeyed, tentative. Lena, dear, I'm calling because Haley is, well, she's devastated. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Lena stepped into the shade, her gaze fixed on the mountains in the distance. I doubt that. I know how these things can get twisted, Marjorie continued too quickly. Haley can be impulsive, but she's heartbroken over how things turned out. You two just need to talk. Lena's tone didn't shift. There's nothing to untangle. What's done is done. A pause. Surely you don't mean that. You've always been such a generous woman. Surely there's room for forgiveness. Lena turned one of the citrus leaves between her fingers, watching how the light caught its edges. Forgiveness doesn't require an invitation to repeat the offense. Marjorie hesitated. Lena, please. You've taken away everything. The trust, the access, Lena cut her off, voice smooth as glass. I don't owe you an explanation, Marjorie. Or your daughter. The silence on the other end stretched long and fragile. Then, in a small, bruised tone, Marjorie said, You're cruel. Lena smiled faintly to herself. No, I'm consistent. She hung up before Marjorie could respond. Inside, Jasmine sat at the kitchen counter, laptop open, a spreadsheet glowing pale blue in the morning light. She looked up when Lena entered. Morning, Mrs. Cross, Wendy called. The paperwork for the joint medical directives is ready. Good, Lena said, slipping off her gloves. Remove Haley's name from all advance directive authorizations. She doesn't make decisions for me. Ever. Jasmine nodded. Understood. That'll take me about an hour to update across all accounts. Lena poured herself a glass of iced tea, the cubes clinking softly. When you're finished, send Wendy the confirmation files and the notarization record. I want this one sealed tight. Jasmine hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Do you want me to notify Daniel? No, Lena said, eyes on the glass in her hand. He'll find out when it matters. By afternoon, Daniel arrived unannounced. The front gate buzzed, the intercom crackling with his voice, tight, uncertain. Mom, can we talk? Lena met him in the sitting room, her posture measured, her expression unreadable. Daniel looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from being stretched between loyalty and embarrassment. "Haley's a mess," he said before sitting down. "She called me crying this morning, said her mom tried to reach you." "She did," Lena replied evenly, briefly. "Then you know what this is doing to her?" Lena set her tea down on the side table. "Daniel, your wife made her feelings about me perfectly clear. I'm simply taking her at her word." "She didn't mean it," he said, voice rising. "It was a stupid comment. People say things they don't." Lena's eyes lifted to his, calm and sharp. "This isn't about words. It's about who she revealed herself to be when she thought I'd always forgive it." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Mom, I just want peace. Between you two. This war you're waging, it's not helping anyone." Lena smiled faintly. "Peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of boundaries." He stared at her, caught between frustration and guilt. "You've changed." "No," Lena said softly. "I've stopped pretending." He exhaled, shoulders slumping. "So that's it? You're just cutting her out?" "This is between me and your wife," Lena said, her tone final. "Not negotiable." He started to speak again but stopped when he saw the expression on her face, the same expression she'd worn at his father's funeral, when everyone else fell apart. Unyielding, graceful, composed. Daniel nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll tell her." "Do," Lena said, lifting her tea again. "And tell her to stop using the word ours. Nothing in my world ever belonged to her." That evening, Wendy called as the desert sky deepened into violet. "The real estate division has been notified," she said. "I've filed a formal freeze on all joint family property reviews. Haley won't be able to initiate any audits or claims under Daniel's marital filings." Lena leaned against the railing of her balcony, watching the last trace of sunlight sink behind the mountains. "Excellent," she said. "I want the freeze to stay in place, indefinitely." "Already arranged," Wendy replied. "You'll have the documentation by morning." "Thank you, Wendy. You're always efficient." "It's what you pay me for," the lawyer said dryly. "Are you all right?" Lena's eyes drifted toward the flickering lights of the city below. "Perfectly." When the call ended, she stood for a while, the warm wind brushing against her hair, the scent of creosote faint on the air. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled low, a storm forming beyond the mountains. The storm that had rumbled on the horizon the night before arrived by morning. Gray clouds sprawled across Scottsdale's desert sky, heavy and low. Lena Cross sat at her breakfast nook with the same deliberate calm she carried into every battle. A pot of black coffee steamed beside a stack of printouts Jasmine had left for her. On the top page was Haley's latest performance. Some people forget who's supposed to be in the Will Thunchach family drama Tuck's Truth Hurts. Below it, comments scrolled in neat, messy chaos. Friends offering sympathy, distant relatives chiming in, strangers speculating. Lena's eyes moved over each one, unhurried, until she found the lines that mattered most. The ones where Haley had named her indirectly. "Old money rots people from the inside." "You'd think a widow would want her family to succeed, not destroy it." Lena didn't sigh. She simply reached for her printer and began feeding screenshots through the machine, one by one. The rhythmic hum filled the quiet kitchen, each printed page sliding out like an official record of arrogance. When she was done, she stacked the pages neatly, clipped them together, and slid them into a folder marked Documentation. Across town, Mr. Alvarez was already at his office, sleeves rolled up, coffee gone cold beside the monitor. The man handled money like a surgeon. Calm hands, precise cuts. He was reading through the latest bank activity log when he saw it. 3 attempted transfers from Daniel and Haley's joint account, all denied under the new freeze Lena had ordered. He picked up the phone. "Mrs. Cross, it's Richard." Lena answered on the second ring. "Morning, Richard." I've locked down all remaining transfers linked to your estate. She tried to move liquid funds under Daniel's name, small amounts, but deliberate. Desperation never scales well, Lena said. He smiled faintly on his end. I've also updated the internal alerts. Any further attempts will notify both me and Wendy immediately. Perfect, Lena said. Send me the full report. And Richard. Yes? Add her name to the internal audit list. I want to know every time she breathes near one of my accounts. You'll have it by this afternoon. She hung up, her gaze drifting toward the rain streaking down the window. The storm had started in earnest now, soft, steady, relentless. Meanwhile, Haley was doing damage control the only way she knew how, with filters and fury. She sat cross-legged on her white sofa, phone in hand, scrolling through the echo chamber she'd built. But something was changing. The hearts and comments that had once arrived in waves now trickled, hesitant. Friends who had laughed at her brunch stories and envied her vacations suddenly went silent. One by one, her messages were left on seen. Even her favorite stylist had canceled her appointment. Something came up. Haley's chest tightened. She posted again, sharper this time. It's funny how people worship someone just because she has a last name and a trust fund. I make my own legacy. But this time, not a single reply came. The algorithm seemed to conspire with the universe, burying her voice in the noise of 1,000 other dramas. Back at Lena's house, Jasmine stepped into the study holding a new folder. Everything's updated. The living trust now includes a non-contestation clause. If Haley or anyone acting on her behalf challenges your estate, they lose their share immediately. Excellent, Lena said, signing the amendment without hesitation. Jasmine hesitated at the edge of the desk. Do you want her to know? Lena's pen paused midair. No, people behave truer when they think they still have leverage. She sealed the folder and set it aside. Her phone buzzed, a text from Wendy. Any updates on the posts? Lena snapped a photo of the printed pages and sent them back with a single message. This will be useful later. A small flicker of lightning flashed outside, followed by the soft, distant roll of thunder. The desert storm had broken fully now, washing everything in gray and gold. Jasmine moved to close the window against the rain. Do you ever wonder if she'll stop? Lena smiled, slow and knowing. She doesn't know how to stop. But eventually, she'll learn how to fall. That evening, the rain thinned into a light drizzle. Lena sat alone in her living room. The folder of Haley's posts resting on the coffee table like evidence at trial. She poured herself a glass of Merlot, watching the reflection of the storm in the wine's dark surface. Her phone buzzed once more, an alert from a private number. The preview line read, Haley Cross mentioned you in a post. Lena opened it. Some people play God with paper. Let's see how divine they feel in court. The rain cleared by Friday, leaving Scottsdale gleaming and new, the air rinsed clean. By sunset, Lena's Mediterranean-style home glowed under soft amber lights, every surface polished, every place setting precise. The dining room shimmered with quiet elegance. Crystal stemware, linen napkins, a centerpiece of white orchids that mirrored Lena's restraint. Beautiful, untouchable. The guest list was small and deliberate. Only those who had earned her trust over the years. Wendy Sloan sat near the end of the table, posture impeccable, glass of Cabernet held loosely in one hand. Mr. Alvarez and his wife, dignified as always, occupied the opposite side. Even Jasmine had been invited tonight, her first time sitting among Lena's inner circle, a silent acknowledgement of loyalty rewarded. The low hum of conversation filled the air, punctuated by the faint chime of cutlery against china. The mood was easy, almost celebratory, until the front door opened. No one had knocked. Every head turned toward the sound of heels clicking against the marble foyer. Haley Cross appeared in the doorway, immaculate in an ivory cocktail dress, diamonds glittering at her throat, a strained smile stretched too tight. Her hair was perfect. Her composure wasn't. "Wow," she said, voice just shy of brittle. "Quite the family gathering." Lena didn't rise. "You weren't invited." Haley's smile didn't falter, though her eyes darted around the table, counting allies, finding none. "I figured there must have been a mix-up. After all, I am family." Wendy's expression didn't shift, but her hand moved subtly toward her phone, ready if needed. Mr. Alvarez avoided looking at Haley entirely. Jasmine stood near the sideboard, silent, still as glass. Lena set down her wineglass with deliberate care. "This dinner is for family, Haley. You made it clear you didn't consider me part of yours." Haley's laugh came out thin and strained. "Oh, come on, Lena. You're really going to keep punishing me for one offhand comment? This is ridiculous. Daniel and I—" Her voice cracked slightly on his name. "We deserve to be part of this." Lena folded her napkin neatly and placed it beside her plate. "You may address your husband about that, but not me." Haley's gaze flicked toward Daniel's empty chair, the seat he should have occupied, but didn't. She hesitated, eyes flickering with something raw. "He said he'd try to convince you," she murmured. "I thought he'd be here." "He chose not to come," Lena said quietly. Which was wise. Haley's mask wavered then, the poise cracked at the edges, revealing a flash of anger. "You can't keep doing this," she hissed. "Making me the villain, shutting me out like I don't exist. I am part of this family." Lena stood then, not abruptly, but with that same serene control that made even silence a weapon. "You were," she said simply. "You no longer are." For a moment, the air in the room went weightless. Haley's lip trembled, but she straightened her shoulders. "I don't believe you have the authority to say that." Jasmine moved forward then, calm as a shadow, a sealed white envelope in her hand. "Mrs. Cross does," she said, her tone quiet but unyielding. Haley blinked. "What is this?" Lena nodded toward the envelope. "A formal declaration, filed this morning. It states that you are not to represent or affiliate with the Cross family in any personal, public, or professional capacity." Haley's voice wavered. You can't be serious." "I rarely joke," Lena said. Haley tore open the envelope. Inside was a single page on official letterhead, signed by Lena, notarized by Wendy, and witnessed by Alvarez. Her hands shook as she read it, her reflection trembling in the polished mahogany table. The sound of paper tearing echoed as she crumpled the letter in her fist. "You think you can erase me with ink and ego?" Lena met her eyes. "No, Haley, you did that all by yourself." For a heartbeat, the younger woman stood frozen, pride warring with humiliation. Then she turned sharply, heels clicking like gunshots across the marble. The door slammed behind her, leaving only the faint scent of her perfume, a synthetic sweetness that clashed with the rain-washed air. Silence filled the room again. No one spoke. Lena returned to her seat, lifted her glass, and said quietly, "To peace." The others followed suit, their glasses rising in unison. Jasmine lingered a moment longer by the window, watching Haley's car reverse too fast down the drive, red taillights vanishing into the dark. She turned back toward Lena. "Do you think she's done?" Lena's smile was slow, cold, certain. "People like Haley never stop until they run out of places to stand." The storm Haley promised came dressed in paperwork. 3 weeks after the dinner, a courier arrived at Lena's gate with a thick manila envelope stamped, "Confidential, Court Notice." Jasmine accepted it, her expression barely flickering as she handed it to her employer in the study. Lena took her reading glasses from the table and opened the packet with the same deliberate care she'd used to carve a fine roast. Her eyes moved across the first page. then the second. Then the accusation. Petition. Claim of elder manipulation and undue influence filed by Haley Cross' daughter-in-law. Jasmine's voice was tight. She's accusing you of mental incompetence. Lena folded the papers neatly, setting them aside as though they contained nothing more urgent than a grocery list. Desperation, she said quietly, always arrives disguised as righteousness. 2 days later, Wendy Sloane's office became a war room. Laptops open, folders stacked in military precision, legal pads scattered with notes. Wendy stood behind her desk, sleeves rolled up, every movement exact. She's alleging that you were coerced into removing her from the trust, Wendy said, that your cognitive state has declined since your husband's death. Lena arched a brow. Declined? I manage 3 properties, 2 funds, and a staff of 5. She's banking on drama, Wendy replied, not facts. Jasmine entered then, a portable drive in hand. The recordings are ready, she said. Wendy nodded. Good. Let's make sure the judge sees the difference between grief and clarity. Lena tilted her head, curious. Recordings? Wendy smiled faintly. Every meeting we've held since you changed your estate was documented. Full video, time-stamped. You spoke lucidly, referenced prior amendments, quoted sections of Arizona estate law from memory. If she wants to argue confusion, she'll have to outsmart your own competence. Lena allowed herself the smallest smile. Then she's already lost. The first hearing was set for Monday morning in Maricopa County Court. The desert heat pressed against the glass walls of the courthouse like a physical presence. Haley arrived early, flanked by a young, overconfident attorney in a navy suit who looked like he'd practiced his indignation in a mirror. Cameras snapped as she walked in, her makeup flawless, her expression one of wounded dignity. Lena, on the other hand, arrived quietly. No statement, no theatrics. Just Wendy and a slim black briefcase. Inside the courtroom, Haley's lawyer began his monologue. Words like exploitation, confusion, emotional coercion hanging thick in the air. He painted a portrait of a lonely widow manipulated into punishing her family. Then Wendy rose. She approached the bench with a calm that silenced even the reporters in the back row. Your Honor, before we continue, I'd like to submit Exhibit A, video evidence of Mrs. Cross's meetings during the estate revision. The lights dimmed slightly as a monitor flickered on. There was Lena, seated across from Wendy, her tone crisp, her memory exact. She quoted investment yields, identified assets, even corrected Wendy on a filing date with dry precision. In the footage, Wendy asked, "You're aware that these changes will remove your daughter-in-law from all beneficiary lists?" Lena had smiled. Yes, and I'm aware she earned it. When the video ended, the room was still. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, glanced toward Haley's lawyer. Counselor, do you have any rebuttal evidence to demonstrate diminished capacity? He hesitated. Your Honor, we, believe emotional manipulation can... Belief isn't evidence. The judge cut in, voice cool. I see no basis for this claim, and unless your client has something substantial, I suggest we conclude before this crosses into sanction territory. Haley's face drained of color. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering something urgent. The judge's gaze hardened. One more false allegation like this, and I will personally recommend disciplinary action. Do I make myself clear? Haley's voice was a whisper. Yes, Your Honor. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Lena ignored them, slipping into the back seat of Wendy's car. But Wendy paused, lowering her sunglasses. Off record? She asked the nearest journalist. The woman nodded eagerly. Wendy smiled faintly. Mrs. Cross isn't the one losing control. She's the one who built the map. By the time Lena reached home, social media was ablaze, but not with sympathy for Haley. Someone had leaked financial summaries showing years of Haley's extravagant spending. vacations, designer accounts, and consulting fees, billed through Daniel's firm. The source was anonymous, but Lena knew exactly whose discretion it carried. Mr. Alvarez never broke confidentiality, unless it served justice. That night, Lena stood in her study, the city lights flickering below like quiet applause. Jasmine entered, holding her phone. "It's trending," she said. "Haley's lawyer withdrew. The story's gone viral." Lena didn't look away from the window. "Let it burn itself out." Jasmine hesitated. "And if she retaliates?" Lena smiled, faint and unbothered. "Then we'll let her finish what she's already started. Public self-destruction." The fallout from the courthouse had left ripples across every corner of Haley's curated life. What began as whispers had turned to silence, the kind that stings more than gossip. But the silence didn't last long. Lena had work to finish. By midweek, Wendy's office became the nerve center again, but this time it wasn't defense. It was closure. Stacks of financial records sat neatly arranged on her desk, each bearing a note in Jasmine's neat handwriting. "Every joint account tied to Daniel and Haley has been reviewed," Wendy said, sliding a summary toward Lena. "Your signature was listed as guarantor on 3. We'll be closing them by end of day." Lena skimmed the report, her expression serene. "Remove my name from all associated credit lines, the ones she used most frequently." Wendy's pen hovered. "That includes the Amex Black. It's under the Cross Legacy account. Her charges have been substantial." "Precisely why it's ending," Lena replied. Jasmine, seated across from her, opened her laptop. "We've already deactivated the card. The SUV lease she's driving is in your name, too. Delivery scheduled for tomorrow morning." Lena's eyes flickered toward Jasmine, approving. "She'll learn the difference between owning and borrowing." Across town, Haley woke to the hollow sound of an engine refusing to start. The dashboard of her white SUV blinked, account suspended. She tried the ignition again. Nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from the dealership. Lease agreement terminated. Vehicle retrieval in process. She stared at it in disbelief, then scrolled furiously through her banking app. Every card she tried flashed the same message. Transaction declined. Her manicure clicked against the screen as she tried another, then another. Each failure chipped away at her composure. "Daniel!" she shouted. "Come here!" He appeared in the doorway, still half asleep, tie undone. "What now?" "Everything's frozen," she snapped. "The car, the cards, the joint accounts." "What did your mother do?" Daniel rubbed his eyes. "Those were her accounts, Haley. She must have finally cut the rest of them off." Haley's voice cracked. "She can't do that. You're her son." He sighed, weary. "You've been spending like this would never end. I had no idea half those bills existed until they started showing up." Haley's jaw trembled. "Don't make me the villain, Daniel. She's doing this to get between us." "She doesn't have to," he said quietly. "You already did." Haley stared at him, stunned by the flatness in his tone. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument they'd ever had. At the same hour, Lena sat at her kitchen island, phone pressed to her ear. "Everything has been closed," Mr. Alvarez confirmed. "Accounts, leases, credit cards, all inactive as of this morning. We're also auditing past transactions. Some are questionable." "Handle them quietly," Lena said. "No confrontation, just correction." "Yes, ma'am," he replied. As the call ended, Lena's gaze drifted toward the window. The desert light had a clarity to it today. No haze, no storm, just truth laid bare under a flawless sky. Jasmine entered carrying a stack of envelopes. "The credit institutions have confirmed closure, but there's one more thing." She placed a single invoice on the counter. Haley's handwriting scrawled across the top. "Consulting retainer, $14,500. Lena lifted the paper, scanning the forged signature at the bottom. Hers. She tried to slip it through after the shutdown, Jasmine said quietly. Lena smiled faintly. Even at the end, she still believes in shortcuts. Do you want me to report it? No, Lena said, folding the paper neatly. Let it sit unpaid. Sometimes silence is the most humiliating rejection of all. That afternoon, Haley took her frustration online. Funny how people pretend to be classy while cutting their family off like snakes shedding skin. Karma's patient. I'm not. Within an hour, the post was screenshotted and shared, then deleted. By evening, she tried again. Another cryptic caption, another collapse into deletion. The likes were gone. The sympathy had evaporated. The luxury, it turned out, had never belonged to her. It had been borrowed confidence, borrowed status, borrowed shine. And now, stripped of it all, she felt the bare sting of her own reflection. At sunset, Lena stood by her pool, the water glowing cobalt under soft lights. Jasmine appeared in the doorway, a small brown envelope in hand. Everything's processed, she said. No remaining accounts or assets tied to her name. Lena nodded, taking the envelope. Inside were the final receipts, official confirmation that every connection between her estate and Haley Cross had been severed. For a moment, Lena traced her fingers across the papers, then looked up at the fading light. Clean, she said softly. Finally clean. But even as she said it, her phone buzzed on the patio table. A message from Daniel. Mom, she's threatening to sell something that isn't hers. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that waits for something to break. Daniel stood in the living room surrounded by unopened mail, overdue notices, and a single credit card statement that had finally forced him to stop pretending. The numbers didn't lie. Neither did the silence. When the door opened, Haley swept in like she still owned the place. Heels clicking, sunglasses still on though it was nearly dusk. She tossed her purse on the sofa and froze when she saw the papers spread across the table. What's all this? She asked. Too light, too casual. Bills, Daniel said. Collections, cancellations, overdrafts. All of it. Stuff you hid. Haley laughed, sharp and practiced. I didn't hide anything. You're the one who doesn't pay attention. Daniel looked up at her, and this time there was no softness in his eyes. I pay attention now. Her jaw tightened. Oh, please. Don't start playing accountant because Mommy cut off your allowance. He flinched, not at the insult but at the tone, the same contempt he'd ignored for years. He held up a single sheet of paper. Explain this. 15,000 to a consulting firm, signed in Mom's name. Haley crossed her arms. You're really going to interrogate me over one invoice? She owed me. After everything she's done, she doesn't owe you anything, he said quietly. And neither do I. Haley blinked, disbelief flickering into anger. You sound just like her. Daniel's voice stayed calm, almost eerily so. Maybe that's because she's the only one who's ever been honest with me. Haley's laugh cracked. Honest? You mean manipulative. She's been turning you against me from the start. You think she's some saint because she plays quiet and calm while she pulls everyone's strings. No, he said, setting the paper down. She just finally stopped pretending to like you. I'm starting to understand why. Haley's mouth fell open. Unbelievable. You're taking her side. Daniel looked around the room. The expensive furniture, the unused exercise bike, the stack of brand name boxes in the corner that still smelled like new leather. I'm taking reality's side. You drained everything we had trying to keep up appearances for people who don't even answer your calls anymore. She grabbed her purse, voice trembling. You think you can just walk away from me? You think she's going to save you? Newsflash, Daniel. She doesn't care about you either. She never did. He didn't rise to it. He just stood there, still and tired. You should go. For the first time, she hesitated. Uncertain, searching for the charm that used to work. When she couldn't find it, her face hardened. Fine, she said. Let's see how long you last when she controls every penny. The door slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the empty rooms. That night, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen counter. The air smelled faintly of Haley's perfume, the expensive kind that lingered even after she was gone. He poured himself a drink and stared at the pool outside, her reflection gone from it, the house too still. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown courier service. Delivery for Daniel Cross from L Cross. Signature required. When he opened the box, he found a stack of old photographs. Him as a child, missing teeth, grinning beside his father. At the bottom was a short note written in Lena's careful script. When you're ready, I'll be here. Mom, he sat there for a long time, the note between his fingers, the weight of everything finally settling in. The next morning, Lena met with Wendy in her office. The desert sun poured through the windows, turning the wood grain on Wendy's desk to gold. I need a clause added, Lena said simply. Wendy raised a brow. For Daniel? Lena nodded. If he divorces, his inheritance remains protected. She won't touch a cent. Wendy made a quick note, then looked up. You're anticipating the inevitable. Lena's smile was small, measured. I'm ensuring it doesn't cost him twice. Jasmine appeared in the doorway, holding a small file. Haley's been listing household items online, she said. Designer bags, furniture, jewelry, things bought with your credit lines. Lena didn't even look surprised. Let her sell them. None of it was ever hers anyway. By evening, Daniel's phone buzzed again. A message from Haley. I hope you know what you've done. You'll regret this. He stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it without replying. Outside, the desert sky glowed with the last light of day. Beautiful, merciless, clear. The morning Haley's last illusion began to unravel. The Arizona sky was an endless blue, cruel in its perfection. She stood in her home office surrounded by vision boards and color swatches, the name Haley Cross Designs printed in gold across the mock-ups. She'd spent weeks rebuilding her image, crafting proposals, calling investors who still answered her number. Reinvention, she'd told herself. They love a comeback story. Then her phone chimed. It was an email from her business partner, terse and surgical. Effective immediately, we've decided to withdraw Lena Cross's name from the partnership application. The board believes it may create reputational concerns with investors. Haley read the sentence 3 times before the meaning pierced through. Withdraw Lena Cross's name. She'd tried to build credibility off the very person who had erased her. Her pulse quickened. She opened another email, this one from a potential investor she'd courted for months. Given recent press coverage surrounding your family's estate matters, we're going to pass on the project for now. Wishing you the best. No signature, no courtesy call, just absence. Haley's hand shook as she set down her coffee. Reputational instability, she whispered, tasting the phrase like poison. Across town, Lena sat at her desk, calm as ever. The faint scent of white lilies, freshly delivered, filled the room. Jasmine stood by the window, tablet in hand. The Legacy Foundation gala roster just finalized, she said. Haley's name was still listed as a co-chair from before the changes. Lena didn't look up. Remove her. Jasmine nodded. I already drafted the formal notice. It'll go out this afternoon. Good, Lena said, signing another document. Be polite, always polite. At the Foundation's headquarters later that week, an assistant handed Haley the printed notice with an apologetic smile. Dear Mrs. Cross, due to recent administrative restructuring and policy changes, we regret to inform you that your participation in the Legacy Foundation Gala has been rescinded. We appreciate your understanding. Haley read it once, then again, disbelief giving way to fury. "They can't just rescind me," she snapped. "I'm the face of that event." The assistant glanced down. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cross. It was Mrs. Lena Cross's decision." Haley's laugh was sharp. Brittle. Of course it was. The night of the gala arrived bathed in the kind of Scottsdale opulence Haley once called her natural habitat. The venue glittered with chandeliers and desert blooms, guests in black tie attire murmuring over champagne. Lena stood near the entrance, greeting donors with a poised smile, her silver gown catching the light like armor. She'd expected Haley might try something, but not this soon. Outside, the valet stand erupted in quiet confusion as Haley stepped out of a rideshare, wrapped in sequins and defiance. Cameras flashed, unsure whether to treat her as a guest or an intruder. "Mrs. Cross," the attendant stammered, "I'm afraid your name is supposed to be on the list," she cut in. "Check again." He checked. Twice. It wasn't. Jasmine appeared then, calm as ever, a clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Cross," she said evenly, "I'm afraid this is a private event. Your invitation was rescinded." Haley's voice rose, brittle with panic. "You can't keep me out of my own family's foundation." "This is Mrs. Lena Cross's foundation," Jasmine said, "and her family's. You are not currently affiliated." For a moment Haley just stood there, glittering under the entryway lights, surrounded by people who refused to meet her eyes. The photographers stopped taking pictures. The silence that followed was worse than mockery. It was absence. Haley's voice cracked when she finally spoke. "You'll regret this," she whispered. Jasmine didn't answer. She simply turned and walked back inside, leaving Haley in the desert night, sequins catching the streetlight like broken glass. 2 days later, Daniel sat in a quiet lawyer's office downtown. The blinds were drawn, the air too still. He signed his name once, twice, 3 times, each stroke cleaner than the last. "Petition for legal separation," the attorney said, sliding the documents away. "We'll proceed discreetly." Daniel only nodded. That evening, Lena's doorbell rang. A delivery, white roses and a small card sealed in gold. She opened it to find Wendy's neat handwriting. "You won." Lena stared at the words for a long moment, then set the card aside. Winning, she knew, wasn't always the same as peace. She looked toward the horizon where the sky burned orange and violet over the desert hills. The morning Lena signed the final version of her estate, the desert outside her study was still and windless, the kind of stillness that came just before the season turned. On her desk, a single stack of papers waited beside a fountain pen. Black ink, clean lines, no room for uncertainty. Wendy sat across from her, glasses low on her nose, the legal document unfolded between them. "This version includes all amendments," she said. "Daniel Cross, sole beneficiary, and—" she paused, tapping the page. "The protective clause you requested." Lena adjusted her glasses, scanning the paragraph slowly. "In the event that Daniel Cross remarries Haley Cross, née Dorsey, or reinstates her as a financial partner in any form, he forfeits all rights to the Cross estate and holdings." Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture, her shoulders settling back, the faint lift of her chin, carried finality. "Good," she said quietly. "Then let's make it official." She signed her name, the looping L and C steady as ever, then passed the pen back. The sound of Wendy's notary stamp echoed softly through the room, like a gavel striking wood. "It's done," Wendy said. "Every trace of her connection to your family is legally severed." Lena folded her hands. "Not every trace, but enough." That afternoon, the Cross Estate gate camera captured a familiar figure approaching in the shimmering heat. Haley stood there, disheveled but determined, clutching a manila envelope. The security speaker clicked. "Mrs. Cross?" came the guard's voice. It's Haley, she said, forcing calm into her tone. I need to speak with Lena. Just for a moment. I'm sorry, ma'am, Mrs. Cross isn't accepting visitors. She'll want to see me, Haley pressed. Tell her I came to apologize. Silence. Then a soft mechanical whir. The gate stayed closed. Haley tried again. Please, I just need 5 minutes. The intercom light blinked red. Access denied. The cameras above the stone archway glowed faintly, their lenses adjusting to the light, red dots pulsing like eyes that had already seen too much. She waited another 10 minutes, watching the shadows stretch across the driveway. Then, with a shaking breath, she turned away. Behind her, the estate stayed silent, the kind of silence that wasn't absence, but refusal. Inside, Lena stood in her upstairs office, watching from the monitor as Haley's car reversed down the drive. Jasmine hovered near the doorway. She came to apologize, Jasmine said softly. Lena nodded once. Some apologies are just new forms of manipulation. Do you want me to notify her that the mail she sent last week was returned? Not yet, Lena said, eyes still on the screen. Let her think it's unread. It'll mean more that way. 3 days later, the envelope arrived again, forwarded through Lena's law office, a cream-colored stationery envelope sealed with a wax stamp. Jasmine laid it on Lena's desk. She sent this by hand, Jasmine said. No return address this time. Lena studied it, tracing the familiar loops of Haley's handwriting. Her fingers hesitated only for a second before sliding it into a larger envelope. Send it back, she said. Unopened? Jasmine asked. Lena looked up. Especially unopened. The next morning, Jasmine stopped by the estate's small administrative office, a donation box tucked under her arm. Inside were the things Haley had once given Lena: handwritten holiday cards, an unused silk scarf, a bottle of perfume still in its packaging. The woman at the front desk of the women's shelter looked up as Jasmine placed the box on the counter. For your annual charity auction, Jasmine said. The woman smiled warmly. Everything helps. Jasmine nodded. These might too. They used to belong to someone who forgot what generosity looked like. She left without waiting for a receipt. Back at the estate, the sun had slipped low, turning the stucco walls gold. Lena sat on her porch with a cup of mint tea, the air warm and dry against her skin. For the first time in months, she didn't feel the weight of reaction or defense. There was only quiet, a quiet she'd earned. Her phone buzzed on the side table. It was a message from Daniel. Mom, it's done. The papers are signed. I filed them today. Lena read it twice before setting the phone down. Her reflection in the glass doors caught her eye. Steadier now. Clearer. She reached for her tea again, the faintest smile pulling at the corner of her mouth. Across town, Haley sat in her car outside Daniel's apartment complex, an unsigned letter in her lap. Her eyes were red, her nails chipped, her phone lighting up with unread texts she no longer had the energy to answer. In front of her, the gate clicked shut, the same mechanical sound as before, unforgiving, precise. She started the car but didn't drive away right away. The world she'd built on borrowed names was gone. And now even her own sounded hollow when she whispered it aloud. As dusk deepened, Lena's phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Wendy. Filed, recorded, finalized. Daniel Cross, sole heir. Haley Cross, permanently disqualified. Beneath the message was a photograph of the notarized document, the final page gleaming with Lena's signature under the seal. Lena exhaled softly, then looked toward the garden, where the sprinklers began to hiss in rhythmic arcs. By early spring, the desert began to soften again. The sharp chill of winter mornings gave way to warmer air, and the Palo Verde trees lining Lena's street bloomed in sudden bursts of yellow. Change always arrived quietly in Arizona, and Lena had learned to meet it the same way, without spectacle, without fear. The first major change came in the form of a decision that surprised even Wendy. "You're serious about this?" the lawyer asked one morning, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the proposal. "Completely," Lena replied. "A private education fund, local, not national. I want it to serve the town where I grew up." Wendy glanced down at the cover sheet. The Whitmore Scholars Fund. Lena's maiden name, chosen deliberately. "Full scholarships for children who can't afford to dream big," Lena said. "No legacy names, no donors buying prestige, just talent and need." Wendy smiled faintly. "You could have started a dozen vanity charities, but this feels like you." Lena sipped her coffee. "That's the point. For once, it's not about anyone else." A week later, Daniel showed up at her gate unannounced. He didn't call, didn't text, just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain against the bright afternoon light. Jasmine appeared at the monitor. "Mrs. Cross, it's your son." Lena hesitated for a heartbeat before nodding. "Let him in." When Daniel reached the porch, he looked older than she remembered. Grief and guilt had a way of reshaping people, stripping them down to what was true. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me," he said quietly. "Of course I did," Lena said, motioning for him to sit. He did, glancing at the garden. "The place looks the same," he murmured. "It usually does," Lena said. "Change happens slower than people think. Then one day, it's everywhere." He nodded, eyes downcast. "I should have seen what she was doing. I should have listened to you sooner." Lena reached for her tea. "Shoulds are just excuses wearing guilt. The past doesn't owe us apologies, only lessons." Daniel exhaled. "I'm learning." "I know." They sat in companionable quiet after that, the desert wind stirring the citrus blossoms. When he left an hour later, Lena watched him walk to his car, shoulders straighter, the weight between them finally shifting into something more forgiving. 2 months later, Jasmine and Wendy conspired behind her back. It was Wendy's idea first, a small dinner to mark the official launch of the Whitmore Fund, but Jasmine who turned it into something warm. The night of the dinner, Lena entered the private dining room at the Desert Sky Club to find only 6 people seated. Wendy, Jasmine, Daniel, Mr. Alvarez, his wife, and the foundation's first recipient, a bright-eyed 16-year-old named Emma who wanted to be an architect. The table glowed under amber light. No speeches, no reporters, no photographers. Just people who mattered. Jasmine raised a glass. "To Mrs. Cross," she said softly, "for remembering that family isn't always inherited. It's chosen." Lena's throat tightened unexpectedly. She looked around the table, at Daniel's shy smile, Wendy's steady eyes, Jasmine's quiet pride, and Alvarez's approving nod. "To building something that lasts," Lena said. They clinked glasses. Later that night, as dessert plates were cleared, Alvarez stood slowly, clearing his throat. "Lena," he said, "it's time." She frowned. "Time for what?" He smiled, weary but content. "For me to retire. I've arranged for your new trust management team. Jasmine will coordinate everything until the transition's complete." "Richard," Lena said softly, "you've been with us since Daniel was a child." "And that's why I know it's safe to leave now," he said. "You've built something stronger than money can ruin." Lena rose and hugged him, something she rarely did. "You'll be missed." "I doubt that," he teased, but his eyes were kind. "You're in good hands." Weeks later, a small envelope arrived at the estate with no return address. Jasmine brought it in during the evening, leaving it by Lena's chair on the porch. Lena opened it with care. Inside was a handwritten note in looping cursive. "Dear Mrs. Cross, you taught me strength. You probably don't remember me. I was one of your students when you used to volunteer at the community center years ago. I heard about your new scholarship. Because of you, I believe I can do something with my life. Thank you. Arlena folded the letter gently, eyes lifting to the horizon. The sun was sinking behind the McDowell Mountains, the sky awash in apricot and indigo. The air smelled faintly of creosote and rain, the scent of things renewing themselves. For the first time in years, she let herself simply breathe. No battles, no noise, just stillness, earned and deserved. Behind her, the wind rustled the stack of unopened mail on the table. One envelope slipped loose, sliding against the tile, a thick, legal one, stamped Maricopa County Courthouse. Lena's gaze lingered on it, the quiet moment fracturing just slightly. The desert morning unfolded slow and golden, the kind of light that made even stone seem to exhale. Lena Cross walked the length of her property barefoot, a porcelain mug of coffee in hand. The ground, still cool from the night, pressed against her soles. Around her, the citrus trees she'd planted years ago shimmered with new leaves, proof that some roots, once claimed, could not be taken. The estate was quiet now, no echoes of voices that didn't belong. Every motion, the hum of the pool filter, the breeze through bougainvillea, belonged to her again. She'd built this home with her husband, filled it with the kind of order that came from discipline and affection. It had taken one careless voice at a brunch table to remind her that both could be lost if left unguarded. She paused at the edge of the patio, watching the sunrise spill over the McDowell Mountains. Finally, she murmured, exactly as it should be. Under Lena's direction, the Whitmore Scholars Fund became more than a tax-deductible charity. It became movement and purpose. Jasmine managed the applications with her signature efficiency, her laptop always open on the long granite island while she briefed Lena over tea. This year, we funded 12, Jasmine said one morning. Engineering, pre-law, education. The local paper wants to do a feature. Lena smiled faintly. No photos? Of course not, Jasmine said, a hint of pride in her tone. But they're calling you the quiet benefactor. Lena stirred her tea, eyes softening. That's the only kind worth being. Across the state, the Foundation's headquarters, modest but bright, buzzed with activity. Students she'd never meet sent hand-drawn thank you notes, photos of college dorms and messages scrawled in shaky handwriting. You made me believe in the world again. I'll make it count. She read every one. Then she filed them neatly in a drawer labeled Proof of Life. News traveled slower now, but it still arrived when it mattered. Haley Cross had left Arizona quietly, no announcement, no social media farewell, not even a move registered under her name. Daniel mentioned it one afternoon over lunch, his tone light but tired. She's gone, he said. North Carolina, I think. Sold the condo, shut down the business. Lena only nodded, slicing into her salad. Good. The desert keeps no ghosts. Daniel looked at her then. Really looked. You don't hate her anymore. Lena's smile was small, knowing. I don't need to. Hate is just another way of holding on. He reached across the table, touching her hand for the first time in years. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For letting me figure it out on my own. Lena squeezed his hand once. That's the only way men ever do. That week, she met with Wendy one last time in the glass-walled conference room that overlooked the desert. Everything's in order, Wendy said, sliding a final folder across the table. These are your last estate instructions. Airtight, simple, impossible to contest. Lena flipped through the pages, scanning her own life turned into clauses and signatures. You've thought of everything, she said. Wendy's smile was soft. I learned from you. Lena signed the final page, the pen gliding smoothly. Make sure Jasmine has access to everything when the time comes. And Daniel, He doesn't need to know the details. Just the peace of mind. Understood, Wendy said. She paused, then added gently, You know, Lena, you did it. You rewrote the ending. Lena met her gaze. No, I just refused to let someone else write it for me. That weekend, Daniel came over with a small potted tree, an Arizona ash, young and sturdy. I thought it was time to plant something new, he said. Together they worked in the backyard, digging into the red earth side by side. The afternoon sun pressed down, but it felt good, grounding. When the roots were covered and the soil patted firm, Daniel stepped back. It looks small now, he said, but it'll outlive us both. That's the idea, Lena said softly. For a long moment they stood there without speaking. Then she reached for the garden hose, the spray catching the sunlight in thin arcs. The air smelled of wet clay and orange blossoms. Later that evening, Jasmine stopped by carrying a large, flat package wrapped in brown paper. Something for your office, she said, setting it on the table. Lena unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a framed print, simple white background, elegant black script. The weight was never yours to carry. Lena traced the words with her fingertips. It's beautiful. Jasmine smiled. You taught me that line. I suppose I did. As the sun dipped behind the hills, the shadows stretched long across the tile. Daniel poured them each a glass of wine, and for the first time, Lena allowed herself to feel something like contentment. Not pride, not victory, just quiet completion. The house around her, the foundation, the silence. All of it was hers again, untouched. She stepped out onto the porch, the framed print in her hands, watching the horizon fade from gold to indigo. Her voice was almost a whisper when she spoke. She used my name for power. I used mine to erase hers.